gentlemen, are we live yet? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, are we live yet? Yes, we are live once again, coming to you from our secret undisclosed location on Newport Harbor in Newport Beach, California. This is your semi-savvy, politically minded host, Abby Kaufman here, and welcome to everybody on a Taco Tuesday, June 30th, 2026. And with the July 4th weekend coming up, I thought I would try to do my best with a little lighthearted entertainment. And how about this?
Ladies and gentlemen, Yankee Doodle.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about that? Could you believe that? Round of applause for Yankee Doodle Dandy. And I did a Star Spangled Banner uh, video that I'll be posting in the next day or so. I want to kind of time that to be as close to July 4th as possible. And I want to remind everybody, give us a call, 949-629-3820. We are here to take your calls. We are a home for Democrats and liberals and progressive thinkers. We want no backwards thinking people here, no election deniers, no science deniers, no nothing. Our viewers, our watchers, our listeners are people of that deal in reality and fact, unlike other people who seem to deal in unreality and in fiction. And by the way, fiction is kind of another word for a lie, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And as we approach this July 4th, I've been asked to chat with a few people about democracy and how to keep it going. And that's, isn't that the ultimate question right now? Especially in a nation of 340 million people and growing. Uh, we're clearly the largest democracy in the world. I don't think India is a true democracy. Even they have a billion people, and China, that's they may have an assembly, but we all know who calls the shots. So anyway, democracy, we throw the word around, but kind of what is it? And keep in mind that ever since the dawn of creation and man started living in communities, de- decisions had to be made. And the question was, who's going to make the decisions on behalf of the community? You had primitive systems where the biggest, strongest guy who beat everybody up would win. You might have somebody who was born under an eclipse who was destined to be the leader. I mean, God only knows some of these ancient systems. I think Egypt, wasn't that the sun god, where you were a direct descendant of the sun, and therefore you were the pharaoh. So there's all kinds of systems of government, and in democracies, the key distinguishing feature, no matter what form it takes, is the right to vote. And a vote is a voice. Every citizen gets a voice in the government, or is supposed to get a voice. Now, when you had a small group like in Athens, maybe a couple 100,000 people, or even before that, maybe a settlement of 30 to 40, 50 people, it was necessary to make decisions on behalf of the whole group. And there's historical evidence to suggest that councils and some sort of government by consensus had been around, I say, before Greece, and Greece was like what, 500 BC ish. And I think there's even speculation that among Native Americans, the notion of ruling by council instead of by decree was popular. So the notion's been around for a while. But the question is, what do we do with it? How do we keep it going? And there's, of course, it's a multifaceted question. Of course, the question is not how do we keep it going in the U.S. And there's no one size fits all answer. Of course, the key is education in some way and letting people know what the right to vote is and how we got here. It's really too easy just to memorize the dates if you're an elementary school, even high school student. It's so easy to remember, July 4th, 1776, so on and so forth. But what that doesn't go into is the period like from 1607, from the founding of Jamestown, through July 4th, 1776. And that's like 169 years. And don't forget, time moved really slowly back then. I mean, 100 years is a long, long time then. It took what, a month or so to get to Europe. If you had correspondence, within 2 months, you were well informed. So things. When we settled when the first colonists came over, they came over for one big reason: religious freedom. In other words, in England, with Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn and all that, Henry split from the Catholic Church and established the Anglican Church, with, of course, him being the head. And I'm sure everybody remembers the "won't somebody rid me of this, archbishop or whatever it is, of this." No, was it "won't somebody rid me of this meddlesome priest"? I think it was the line. So people early on had wanted to have a say in how their country was run. And if I'm not mistaken, in 1215 was the Magna Carta, and Magna Carta just means the Great Charter. And that was the first imposition of or restriction of a monarch's power. Uh, and that's the House of Commons sprung from that. And of course, the nobles got the House of Lords. And the monarchy now has been a figurehead for ages in England. And but their guys are really representative democracy in that you have no idea what's going to be yelled at somebody from the backbenchers at the House of Commons. House of Lords is slightly different, but the House of Commons is wild. And now keep in mind, the English have had, because of this, they've always had a really unique respect for individual freedoms. And my favorite thing, or one of my favorite things about England, is this place called People's Park. And people kind of joke about the People's Republic of Berkeley and all that. But in People's Park, you can find events. You can just preach whatever it is to whomever stops to listen. And on Sundays, people just kind of walk through the park and see who's a lunatic and who's not, or who's entertaining and who's not. But the thing about what a revolution that was. Before, let's say you had your official Gutenberg printing press, and you wanted to start a little newspaper, moving the little things around. And let's say you had a thing whereby, oh, I don't know, the king did something he wasn't supposed to do with somebody he probably wasn't supposed to do it with. And suppose you wanted to write where there was, whatever it was. And what you would have to do is submit your articles to the king before they could be published, before they could be printed and distributed. And that's called publication. Um, but think about that. And that's where the doctrine of prior restraint comes in. And think about this: you have to show your article to the king before it can be published. And that there's another name for that, and it's called censorship. And we're getting a little reminder of what that's like, courtesy that orange tinged subhuman being or subhuman creature that inhabits the White House. So anyway, you've got the notion of democracy is people having a say. Later on, the political philosophy kind of evolved until it was the relationship between the governed and the governing was that of a contract. We the citizens will pay you taxes and obey the laws. In turn, you are expected to protect us and all that other stuff. So anyway, you kind of get the into it. intimate nature of this. And of course, the smaller the number of people, the easier it is to govern, especially by democracy. Uh, I see. And if you were to jump forward to 2024, you had what? A population of 340 million Americans, and maybe half of those voting, 170 million. And out of that, you would have to have everything recorded and tallied up to declare the winner. And of course, America has this little unique institution called the Electoral College. I frankly think we could live without. I appreciate that it what it does. I appreciate that it tries to make everybody equal, but in doing so, of course, somebody gets taken advantage of. And what happens is the smaller states get more power at the expense of the larger states. For instance, let's pick, I don't know, Rhode Island and North Dakota and South Dakota and how about Montana? I think Montana has one representative, but because of the Constitution, they have two senators, just like every other state. So doesn't that seem a little disproportionate to you? It kind of does to me, and I know what happens with popular voting, and you'll probably have the coast dominate the vote, and the interior of the country feel like uh, they got shafted. But truth is, they got outvoted. They just got outvoted. And do you know who else got outvoted? Pure and simple. I thought you'd never get it. Of course, we're talking about 2020 and Donald Trump and the origins of the big lie. Now, keep in mind, democracy requires people to participate actively. Okay, it requires faith in the system that people's voices, their vote, will be counted and will be heard and will be tallied properly. These are all things that are just inherent in our way of life until now. And of course, everybody knows what the problem is, and of course, everybody's just kind of uh, willing to sit back and watch the grand theft of our country. I see no difference at this point between what Donald Trump does and backing up 18 wheelers and convoys to shovel cash in to make money off the presidency. It was something that was obviously considered and obviously addressed in the Constitution. But the problem with Constitution and governing democracies is that people can make the laws, but they also have to follow the laws, and people have to uh, execute the laws and enforce the laws. So there's always some tension to be resolved. Uh, but like I said, going and democracies teach us that if we don't like somebody or the job somebody's doing in office, that we have an obligation to wait until the term is over and then vote them out. And one argument goes in that the best term limits is just to vote the bum out. And again, the truth of the matter is, as things have evolved, and it's not a pure contest between governing ideals and thoughts. What happens is money kind of enters the 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 game, and you have people broadcasting commercial messages on every media possible until we're sick and tired of hearing it. But more often than not, the person with the most money and the most ads and the most sophisticated campaign wins. I'm encouraging. I deal with a lot of candidates that are I consider pure candidates that just want to do good. And I had a chat with a fellow yesterday, Donald Torres, and Donald is the current city council member in Stanton's District 1 up for re-election. And and democracy depends on good people not cheating. It depends on people that have character and integrity and credibility and things that are just seem to be in a little short supply these days on the Republican side. On the Democrat side, I've spoken to candidates that have won and lost, and I can tell you there's a distinct difference in philosophies and these days the with the advent of identity politics, where people tend to vote with the group they like instead of for the policies they like, things have have things have become ripe for manipulation. And guys, I know this is might be a little soon here, but I just might have to answer the call of nature here. So let's put a little notice out, and and how about that? I'll be right back. Sorry about that, guys. We had to, well, you get the message. So anyway, just out of curiosity, does anybody remember Survivor? Or does anybody watch it? Well, I was just so happened to be living in Sonoma at the time, and would go over to this friend's house and watch it. And the thing that, so anyway, and I had a dog then, and we would go to the dog park in Sonoma, and there was, people don't always, pick up after the dog, don't always obey the rules in the dog park. So there was a notion about some sort of, user or citizen police force or something for the dog park. And so a few of us got together, and after watching Survivor, we decided to have like a tribal council. And I mention that because that the notion of tribal councils is the earliest evidence of how democracy was worked in the U.S. with the Native Americans. You might have a chief and all that, but you always had a council. And you always have to appreciate the wisdom of or or the potential for wisdom in a group. And out of many thoughts, hopefully you get one good one, which is not unlike the E pluribus unum American slogan, out of many one. And but let's get back to democracy right now. And as it stands now, we've got someone in the White House that is actively trying to restrict the number of citizens who exercise their voice in choosing a representative government. Now, to my way of thinking, that kind of seems like treason. But when the enforcement ends, criminality is just free to run, right? And that's exactly what you've seen in the White House. Nobody should make money like this on the White House. I mean, it's laughable. It's so widespread, and it's on the front page. You can't ignore it. They do this in plain sight. And the hypocrisy is the worst part. The Save America Act is all about restricting people's freedom to choose their representatives. So anyway, and they do this by, your signature didn't match, or this didn't match. And the truth of the matter is, in the history of the United States, there has been like 0.0000001% maybe. I mean, that's why it was called the Big Lie by Jamie Raskin on the January 6th committee. And just a little quick notion. What was January 6th not enough for you to vote for this guy? I mean, was it his superior business acumen? I've got 4 pages of bankruptcies and printouts and all that. I mean, there was no reason, no logic, no rational reason to vote for this guy. But anyway, let's I hate to keep dwelling on that, but he's such a threat to democracy. Traditionally, the Supreme Court had interpreted voting as one of those rights that was it should be open to all and as many people as possible, along the lines of our jury system, our legal system. 100 men should go free before one innocent person goes to jail. And we both know how much we've lived up to our end of the bargain on that. I would really, God, if that would be a huge priority. You have the Innocence Project go through prisons, and at least let's try to make some sort of right out of the wrong. But anyway, as I was talking about Donald Torres the other day from Stanton. And I also interviewed a guy not long ago, Ryan Dack, from down in Laguna Beach, I think. And I said Donald's the incumbent city council District 1 in Stanton. and Ryan is an incumbent in the Southern Orange County Community College District. And I think he was the youngest person ever elected trustee. He was maybe 22. And I, be honest with you, I didn't even, ask him how old he was now. He just, substantially younger than me. But anyway, what I see with these guys is just a true dedication and an honesty that cannot exist when you have hypocritical positions as we're seeing daily. Thou shalt not steal. Oh, but it's okay if I steal. You know what I mean? Whatever it is okay because our guy is doing it. This is just, uh, and democracy was about accountability. That was the whole deal. If the people did not like the representatives, they would change. They would have a voice. You're not stuck with them. But here, in our case, we're stuck with God knows what for at least 4 years, uh, and the concomitant damage that's done every day. And while we're, and I want to tell you, I took a little liberty with Jimi Hendrix and my guitar playing, and I did a little thing called the Trump's Epstein Haze, kind of taking a little playbook from Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze. Um, but the guy's just never been accountable. I would really love for these allegations about the violence with a 13-year-old girl that was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, whoever it was. Somebody brought a 13-year-old girl or to him, and it was alleged to have not to have been a violent encounter. And and what's his punishment for this? Oh, the presidency, a grant of immunity from the Supreme Court, and should we just go down the list with Stormy and whoever else? But so going back to Donald and Ryan Dack, and I found this with just about every Democratic politician I've spoken with, and they are all sincerely and honestly vested in their interest. For instance, I talked to two candidates for the Laguna Beach School Board. I have never met women this passionate about the school board, but they realize the importance on many different levels. Number one, they realize the importance to use the voice that they have. Our elections, you pay the filing fee and get some signatures, and you're on the ballot. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Years ago, I always wanted to put my name on the ballot for president, and you used to be able to do it for like $35 until not long ago, and I think they kind of upped it to like hundreds of thousands, or in some show of signatures and supporters. But yeah, you can vote for old Ab for president. How about that? And would I not do a much better job than is being done now? Uh, but anyway, let's try to keep more or less on the Democratic front. And what I want to get across to you is that it's a two-way street. That's the whole concept. As opposed to power just flowing down from a king, a monarch, or whatever you want to call him, Grand Poobah. I don't care. Uh, and of course, as the country grows, the proportionate representation gets larger. So now we have like 435 congressmen and women and 100 senatorial men and women. And everything's designed really well. I hope you guys have paid attention to this. But there's a reason the Congress is elected every 2 years, and the president every four, and the Senate every six. And the reason the representatives run every 2 years is because the notion was that the House of Representatives was supposed to be responsive to the people in the here and now. And if they didn't do what you wanted in the here and now, you didn't want to be saddled with them for too terribly long, and they would have to defend their positions, and either run or get out. Of course, whether they ran and won or ran and decided to get out is an entirely different question. Uh, but like I said, you understand that without people, it just doesn't work. And it's not unlike Moxie Radio Network. Without you guys calling in, it's not nearly as entertaining. And we'd like to invite you to give us a call 949-629-3820 and let us know how things are going in your life. I don't know about you guys, but I had a big thrill. My $120 gas bill, gasoline, was down to what, 105. Oh boy, time to wake the kids and phone the neighbors, huh? And let's while we're and I like I said, democracy of course depends on honest actors, right? But we have dishonest actors in the White House. But where we have honest actors that I have found is on the local level. When people uh, have to convince their neighbors to give them their vote, there's a certain grassroots honesty there. And people still go door to door. I mean, how cool is that? In fact, I did a little bit of that for Dave Min until I stumbled and fell. Uh, but America has this grassroots notion of politics, not unlike the old movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Everybody, it feels like they have an opportunity to go to Washington and try to change something, and that's as it should be. Now the realities of governing in Washington are completely different than the realities of winning the election to represent somebody in Washington. Uh, but you're there. You're responsible for representing your constituents in the best way you can. And I'm going to kind of take a little detour for just a second, talk about Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska. And when the big beautiful bill was being debated, uh, it was in Alaska is so rural, they were obviously going to get taken advantage of in this deal. And the only thing Senator Murkowski could do, well, she could either block the thing and take a hugely courageous stand, or she could do more or less what she was elected to do and get the best deal she could for her constituents. And she did that. With her help, the bill passed. Uh, I said, I feel sorry for her. I wish she would have not been so dedicated, but she had to be. She clearly saw the Democrat side. She clearly saw the bigger picture. But sometimes there's a political saying about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I would much rather have her taken a perfectionist position, but she didn't. And like I say, you can't. It's hard to get mad for somebody that represents their constituents honestly, and I think she did. And furthermore, I think her dad did. Her dad was Frank Murkowski, and if I'm not mistaken, one of those two won in like a write-in. I think it was Lisa. Can you imagine running as a write-in candidate and winning? So I kind of think we need a little more of that to shake things up. I think. Uh, I always say the more candidates, the more discourse, the better. It gets a little awkward at debate time, but as a democracy, we have a responsibility to make sure that our citizens are informed. As a matter of fact, that was the key concept that the founders brought. It was inconceivable to them that you would have an ignorant or general public voting. I mean, they were clearly afraid, but what do you do? Which is why, and don't forget, not everybody had the right to participate. What about the black people that were counted as what the every black person was 3/5 of a person, so that 3/5 of the total number got the were voting. So we've always had these dark chapters in democracy. But and we've had voter suppression in the South. God knows we've had discrimination, voter suppression in the South. But those were problems that were largely solved. We had a turbulent decade in the '60s and a little bit into the '70s, but we got on a decent social path when we got out of Vietnam, and we looked inward, and we looked at the frankly the lies that perpetuated the war in Vietnam, and realized that you really can't trust just everybody, particularly government officials and maybe even military officers who give presidents inflated progress reports so that the president thinks things are going swimmingly well and people are just, dying in insane numbers and not accomplishing anything on the ground. And by the way, we learned a very, very important lesson from Vietnam, or actually Iran did, and we pounded those guys. We were just horrible. I mean, we were like the Israelis bombing the Palestinians with the Vietnamese. I mean, we messed up waterways. It was a dirty war. It was a really dirty war, and out of that came a need for purity. We had that sort of deception. We had Richard Nixon, and you can't be surprised when a righteous Southern Baptist peanut farmer from Georgia would get elected in 1976. The country just had it. No more insiders, no more anything. We're going to vote for the outsider, Jimmy Carter. And everybody has a basic history lesson of Jimmy Carter. But Carter's problem was he was just too decent of a person to be president. He didn't. He really wanted to help people, but it was, he was just too good in like the Iranian hostages. He prayed to get them back. He did whatever it was to get them back. And finally, what did the Iranians do? They held out until Ronald Reagan got elected, and Reagan was like, you better return them, and they did, just out of fear. And of course, Jimmy Carter got tainted, got portrayed as a horrible president. And the truth of the matter is, he's a nuclear engineer on Navy subs, that kind of education, that kind of guy, and a deeply religious guy. So there were lots of conflicts, and he resolved more than a few based on Christian religious principles, which I advocate, but which may not have been appreciated by the larger electorate, because after that, what happened? We got a horrible run of Republican presidents. We got Reagan in 80 and 88, and then thank God we got Clinton in 92, I think. So it's we've got a bit of a road to climb to keep our democracy. But the question now is, how do we keep it? And you have to make people want something or appreciate something. And in this way, and God, I hate this. It's almost like a government indoctrination. But I think that in schools, you can't start saying the Pledge of Allegiance too soon, and you need to kind of work through this and explain to kids that would they like to take orders from somebody, or would they like to make their own decisions? And that's the seed you start with. And again, this has to be done at least from ages 4 until 10, maybe 12. If you could start early enough, preferably, like say, in kindergarten, 4 years old seems to be a magic age for kids. And if you can start instilling the notion, then I think that's a really great way to create some desire, because people will want this. They just may not understand it, and they clearly, I mean, the history of democracies is like a major deal. I mean, doctoral theses or theses have been, no, doctoral dissertations have been written about this. But I do think you need to kind of have a three-pronged attack. I think you need to have some sort of a democracy lesson in elementary schools. I think you need something kind of similar even if it's under the auspices of a mandatory history course, a history or political science course, the history of democracies or comparative governments. I mean, let's spend a semester and compare democracy and socialism and communism and fascism and and let people see. And I think nowadays with AI, we could even recreate a scenario that would get the message across much more effectively using AI. So is that indoctrination? Yes. Uh, do am I crazy about it? I don't know any other way. No, of course I'm not crazy about let's say government indoctrination of anything. But and of course, Trump doesn't. The only way he does stuff or doesn't do is just you know he has to almost threaten people to not do it or he's going to go nuts or whatever it is. And we need order. Societies are just like games. Without rules, we can't exist. And the rules for society are called laws. And while they might have been commandments way back when, thou shalt not kill, that might have been a commandment, but the statute is murder, lying, whatever it is. So there's always, always, always this tension in democracy. Uh, between the me and the we, between the two parties who, and politics ultimately is who gets what and how they get it. And I say my favorite analogy here is that thing about how the meek shall inherit the earth. And I'm thinking to myself, well, the meek might inherit that building on Coast Highway, but I have a hell of a time getting title to it. So democracy has certain rules and formalities, and we depend on more or less uniform, equal enforcement. We did not have that for a long time. For instance, in the Jim Crow era, if you were a white person, you did whatever this was great. If you were a black person, they'd throw you under the jail. And there used to be this place called that was under, I think it was under the old Cooper River Bridge in Charleston, South Carolina, and that was the jail, which was my granddad affectionately called the Sea Breeze Inn. And if you spent any time on the Sea Breeze Inn, you were going to get pneumonia or whatever you get from or bubonic plague from the rats, whatever it was. It wasn't going to go well. Uh, so anyway, so we've got, like I said, this democratic tension, and guys, here we are. It is what midway through the year 2026, and we've got an election coming up in what 5 months? No, less than 170 something days. And guys, I can only hope that you've been attuned to the willful destruction of the government that we just cannot put up with. We have lost our way as far as global leadership in so many ways, and it's been done by through claims of getting people to not vote, claims of a rigged election, a crooked election. And let's see, in our history, we have no record of that. What, maybe one fraudulent vote out of a couple of 100,000. And this is really dangerous because what Trump did was he came up with a problem that did not exist and sold it to America. I mean, the guy's just a scam artist. And that's really inconsistent with a government, with an honest government official. And when I think about, Ryan Dack or Donald Torres or John Malczewski or Shaheen, whose last name escapes me, or Joe Kerr or Shannon Brown, no, Shannon Wingfield or Susanna Brown. Uh, I see all people of integrity and honesty. And, sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. And all we can do as Democrats is we can do two things. We have to run really great races, and we have to make sure that our votes get counted. Because just think about the deal that Trump has on the table. If the Democrats don't do X, the Postal Service won't deliver their ballots. Is that not election interference of the highest order? Is that not throwing a monkey wrench into the operation of the United States? I clearly think it is, and like I said, that's another way we need to have these Democrat marches and speakers. I see no reason why individual can't work a little bit of this in there. I mean, the gatherings are fun and all that. And the truth of the matter is, most of the people, at least in California, are pretty well educated and pretty well informed about this. I think the predominant problem is in the South, and I will only go as far as Texas and Ken Paxton to make that point. If there was a more compatible, or what's that word, simpatico, if there was a more simpatico candidate for office for Donald Trump than Paxton, you would have to wake me up and let me see this for real. I mean, the guy's had Paxton has had he's been turned into the FBI by his staff. The guy is as crooked as can be, and Cornyn you had to not like just because he's doesn't have a backbone, but those are in very short supply, and the Republicans have clearly chosen to exercise restraint as far as you know making sure that unwanted activities aren't being profitable, and that and that people aren't just capitalizing. How about the deal with with the Trump sons and the precious metals and all that? It's just criminal. They're breaking the rules of society. They're breaking our contract with them to govern fairly, and we're being asked to sit back and wait until voting them out. And while that's clearly the ultimate way out, it takes organization until to build up to that moment. I'd like to think I have some idea what's going to happen in November 2026, November 2nd, that first Tuesday. And what I think is that not only do I expect the early balloting to be huge, but I expect the vote counts to be. I don't expect a blue wave. I'm really encouraged to believe that a blue tsunami might just be in the works. And I made up a little poem about this. Just thought I'd share with you guys. And it goes like this: We beat them so bad they'll be screaming for mommy. They were expecting a blue wave and got a blue tsunami. How about that? Not easy to find words that rhyme with tsunami, is there? So anyway, that the way I see it, the best thing we can do to keep democracy alive is to vote in every single election and every single opportunity. Do not leave a space on the ballot blank. I tell people, and I've run into more than a few people who tell me that they voted for Trump reluctantly. And I'm like, oh, I'm a little vague on that. So when you vote somebody reluctantly, does that mean you pull the lever halfway and then stop? Or does that mean you pull like 80% of the way? Or did you actually pull the lever all the way over? And of course, they tell me, well, we pull the lever all the way over. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a pretty ringing endorsement from here. You didn't, whatever it was, did not stop you. I was always amazed at that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Okay, we're getting my voice is starting to go a little bit earlier, but there's a few other things I want to say. And The best way, ultimately, the best way, I think, to ensure democracy exists is for people who appreciate democracy to band together in small groups and spread the word on almost with almost like a religious fervor, almost just as people would wave the Bible and point at it. We need to do that with the Declaration and the Constitution, and we need to tell people that. Guys, you've got a say in this. You have a stake. You've got something to say. You know how many countries people are just obligated to take whatever order comes down from on high, and like no, guys, and ultimately, what I really would like to see, I would like to see a school course or school something that would mandate a city council visit. Let's get so people is like at its most basic grassroots level. And I think that's the only way to really build something strong is to start with a strong central concept and disseminate it in the almost one by one or in small groups. Like I said, we may be a nation of 340 million people, and we may be split democratically and Republican and all that. Uh, but we have groups, we have clubs, we have these democratic clubs, at least in California, that are great. And I know they're all over the country. And once we start building those up, we've got them. We just need more people. And, and the truth is, people are running to us. And they're running just kind of out of shame. I mean, to think that people were voted for someone to drain the swamp when he is the swamp. And the most dangerous thing that you should know is that there's no respect for the rule of law. Trump wants to order things around and order people. And like I said, the truth of the matter is he's mentally ill and he's probably physically ill. And at the very least, he's a cranky, unhappy 80-year-old man. And does anybody seriously think he can negotiate anybody? Could he out negotiate Putin? I don't think so. Xi, no, Xi eat him up before, chew him up before you know what happened. Uh, but he really doesn't care about the states. Just like, why do you think he signed the Iran deal that he did? Immeasurably worse than Barack Obama's deal, right? But think about what he did. He sold out the guys in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Emirates, because the notion was the states and Israel were going to come in, clean house, and Iran would be weaker, and there wouldn't be as much violence. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hezbollah's party of God, just by way of passing. And guess what happened? When he bailed out, everybody got worse, except Iran. And Iran made out like a bandit. Okay, $300 billion. Now they're sitting on the on charging tolls for the Strait for passage, but he screwed and betrayed the world. Why? To save his skin, to have a little, more political capital in the U.S. And like I say, now those guys used to actually be the last ones that liked us. We had already pissed off the Europeans beyond belief, but now he sells out the Middle East too. So, like I say, there's the earthquake in Venezuela with the puppet government that we're responsible for that is doing absolutely nothing for their citizens. And of course, when you have a non-caring human being in the White House, you don't exactly rush aid to natural disasters like this, where tens of thousands of people could be dead under the rubble. You see, instead of helping like that, Trump would rather find another a scheme to back up more money into his pocket. And for instance, like I say, the billions of dollars aren't enough for him, but he's got his kids, and that how about that tax deal where he will no longer be subject to audit? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a criminal before our very eyes. And the really sad part is that people still defend him somehow. And there's different types of Americans. I had met a self-made guy, former military guy, started a medical supply business, did real well, listed on New York Stock Exchange. Tremendous guy. And we were chatting one day, and obviously he was on the other side of the fence. And I'm like, what do you look for in a candidate? Just point blank question. And he says, I'll vote for whoever puts money in my pocket. And I gulped. And I'm like, he's not alone. There's lots of people that will do anything for whoever lines their pockets. Okay. And those are the kind of people that, will never convince otherwise. And you got to let them go. The best we can do is work with people that show some interest or some tendency towards being that want to be treated well, maybe haven't been treated well in the past. God knows with the all the rural hospital closures and the SNAP benefits, Democrats are we would have an abundance of people who should vote with Democrats. Whether they do or not is has a lot of factors. I say God only knows what people do in that voting booth. But I want to kind of end this with, because I think my voice is starting to go and the breeze is starting to pick up, and the last thing you want is a cranky Abby Kaufman. So anyway, I kind of I want to remind everybody to give us a call at 949-629-3820 next time they uh, log on and have a chat. So guys, like I said, I'm going to go ahead, go ahead and call it a day. Uh, I want to thank Donald Torres for his interview yesterday, and I want to urge everyone to vote for him. I mean, we have really exceptional candidates. We have an embarrassment of riches in the candidate department, and we would like to ask you to, start voting our way. And anyway, guys, I'll pick this up tomorrow. It's kind of a little meandering thought, but July 4th is coming up, and it's a very significant day. And the sad truth of the matter is, I don't see much to celebrate. The New York Times had their opinion columnists, I think all 16 of them, write about something they would celebrate. And Tom Friedman, for instance, celebrated the notion of crown thy good with brotherhood, that brotherhood ought to be the goal. And what did Michelle Goldberg write? I would, if anybody's interested, I'll read it. I think it was in Sunday's New York Times, and it was called something about July 4th is coming, but what are we celebrating? And that's kind of the boat I'm in. I don't really feel as though there's much to celebrate. Not this time. We're going to celebrate the Great American State Fair. What a flop that was. We're going to celebrate, Trump's remodel the pool. We're going to celebrate on the National Mall with Trump telling us that there's 45,000 people there, and everybody's kind of looking around like, where? There ain't no 45,000 people here. So, guys, this July 4th is going to be a real mixed bag. Thank God it's on a Saturday, and hopefully there'll be some World Cup on and everything to make us have a little bit of enjoyment as we see our president just try to take our rights away before our very eyes. And unless he's not doing it unassisted, he's got plenty of help, plenty of enablers. And all that means is, or exactly what that means is, more and more and more hard work coming up in November. But guys, let's be optimistic. There is strength in numbers. We have been having huge turnouts for every Democratic election. Things have looked really good, and the truth of the matter is, if we don't get Democrats back in office and take back the Supreme Court, women will have no rights and no health care because it'll all be decided by men. It's just, we need this. Uh, we need 2026 midterms. We do need the blue tsunami, and I'm sure I'm well justified in knowing that I can count on every Democrat to turn out for us. So, guys, with that in mind, I think you kind of know what happens about this time of day. If I'm not mistaken, I think we usually say something like